There are a lot of reasons to believe that the MCU is one of the biggest and craziest cinematic universes that anybody could be a part of. As a fan, a character, or an actor, there are tons of different roles throughout history that people want to be a part of, whether it's watching a movie, playing a movie, creating a movie, writing a movie, directing a movie. There are tons of roles and opportunities, and the MCU has a long list of professionals all over the world who want to be involved. Today we're going to talk about the actors who have already said they're ready to go if Marvel calls upon them. This is a list of actors who are ready for roles in the MCU. Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to Cosmic Culture, the channel where we talk all things major movie and television news, theories, breakdowns, and much, much more. I'm your host Chris, and as I mentioned, we're going to be going through some of the top celebrities who have come out and said specifically, hey, if Marvel wants me, I'm available. If you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel and turning on that notification bell, and you can also check me out on my other socials on Instagram at Chris M. Rosser and on Twitter at TheCultureChris. As a fan, it's very easy to make fan cast assumptions. Who would we like to play? Which characters? Who would be perfect for the role? We do it for all sorts of movies and TV shows, live action animations that are being brought to life. Who would play a perfect version of blank? Well, there's a lot of different difficulties that go into that. Availability, desire, who can show up and play the role, who's actually good for the role and doesn't just look like they can play the role. Lots of different considerations that, being outside of the professional scope of casting, sometimes it's hard to appreciate. Then you have budgetary issues, time slots, getting people on the right place for the right thing, especially as we go up in caliber of how famous and desired some of these actors are. So this list is a lot of pretty high caliber actors who have actually said if Marvel wants them, they're ready to go. And the first one on my list, Jason Statham, actually has a rumor currently going around that he's already been casted in a project for the MCU. Now, who he could be playing, there's no confirmation from the report coming from GFR. However, a lot of people seem to be guessing that he could be playing a different version of Union Jack. There's already been a rendition of this comic book character in the MCU, however, there are different individuals that play Union Jack in the comics, different names, different characters, so it's possible that he could take up on a modern version of this character, since the one that we saw in Captain America was around during World War II. So the recreation of Union Jack, played by Jason Statham in the current age and time period, could be really fun. Jason Statham in the past has stated he would be willing to join the MCU if the right character came around, and he was still able, of course, to do his classic stunts and be heavily involved in some of the action scenes. So Union Jack would be a character that falls very well in that awesome category. This next actor is actually Bryce Dallas Howard, who has recently been heavily involved with rumors stating that she could be A, directing Fantastic Four, and B, playing Sue Storm in the Fantastic Four or another Fantastic Four character. These rumors were sparked by John Watts leaving the direction role of Fantastic Four, and then fans immediately starting to say, well, who should direct this movie? Again, this is fan casting, and it's hard to always put the pieces together behind everything that has to go into actually finding a director and actors to play. Immediately, the first thought most of you guys had was John Krasinski could direct this movie, and he maybe sneak himself into the role as well. We would love to see John Krasinski playing Mr. Fantastic in the MCU in our universe, and I think that that would be something really awesome too. However, there are rumors saying that Bryce Dallas Howard could also be doing the directing and playing in the film as Sue Storm. And while we're talking about the big guy, John Krasinski, this is one that fans have been talking about for quite some time now. Probably even longer than we've been talking about John Krasinski playing Mr. Fantastic. People have wanted Jim from The Office to have a role somewhere in the MCU because his sarcastic and snarky attitude and overall cool vibes would really match the ideas of a good character casting in the MCU. Now, since then, John Krasinski's name and Reed Richards' name have basically become unilateral for fans who are hoping by making fan art, throwing out casting theories, throwing out plot theories for a potential casting of this character and his lovely wife to play Sue Storm. Well, we're gonna have to wait and see what happens in the MCU. And if there is an availability for John Krasinski to take the role of Reed Richards and play it as the permanent Mr. Fantastic in the MCU. This next one contains spoilers for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, so if you haven't seen it already, you should skip past this part or click away from the video. So yes, guys, I'm aware John Krasinski has already played a role in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, that he is Mr. Fantastic already, I'm simply referring to whether or not he will have a permanent role in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, whether we'll be seeing him for all time and actually play the Our Universe version of Mr. Fantastic. So we'll have to wait and see about that, and I do certainly hope that that's the case, as he did play a fantastic Reed Richards, pun 100% intended. Alright, back to the list. The next on the list is one that we've all been talking about for a long time. It's Zac Efron, who recently within the last month or so has said, if Marvel needs me, I am ready. Now, we as fans have been talking about Zac Efron playing a large number of different characters in the MCU, namely Human Torch and Adam Warlock. Well, Adam Warlock is taken. Human Torch is certainly up for grabs, but there's really a long list of characters that Zac Efron could play and definitely get away with doing a fantastic job on. Hopefully, there is room for him down the road, and we can have a lot of fun seeing who Zac Efron can turn into for the MCU. Just as a little bit of a side note, we've actually learned a lot from Kevin Feige about how casting in the MCU works. And although there are different ways they go about finding their perfect character, whether they have somebody in mind and they go after them, or whether they have a casting call and different actors come in and try out for roles anonymously, almost not even knowing who they're trying out for. Like Zendaya, who tried out for a role in Spider-Man and didn't even know what role she was trying out for. And this was in fact one of her first big movie gigs that she got, and it turned out that she was MJ and is now one of the lead actors in the film, playing a very important role in the Spider-Man franchise. But then you have actors like the next one on my list today, Keanu Reeves, who have been in talks with Marvel for many years. Kevin Feige has even spoken to them trying to find a role for Keanu Reeves, and Kevin Feige has basically said, when we find the right role, he has it, and we talk with him with every movie that we're doing, that every single movie they go in to do, he thinks of Keanu Reeves to get him involved. There's a relationship there, there's a friendship there, and Keanu Reeves has talked about it too, where he's mentioned that he's been waiting for a role within the MCU, and Kevin Feige's been waiting. They just haven't found the right or perfect role for him yet. We know that casting in the MCU is something that they take very seriously. They're not going to get somebody just for namesake. It has to make sense, and it has to do justice to the character, which is something that they've done very well at Marvel Studios over the last 15 or so years. They have casted perfect characters by getting these actors that really fit the roles, almost to the sense that these actors become the character. Like with Robert Downey Jr., who really, when you look at him, you just see Tony Stark. But of course, a lot of people would like to see Keanu Reeves play Ghost Rider in the MCU, and I guess that's really up to Kevin Feige and Keanu Reeves whether or not he would fit that role to perfection, or if they're going to have to continue to wait to see what fits him best down the line. Next on the list is actually Daniel Radcliffe, who was talking in an interview with his recent movie that's come out with Sandra Bullock, who basically said, Marvel, here he is, come and get him, he could play anybody in the MCU. I believe specifically in this interview they were talking about Wolverine, and Daniel Radcliffe replied, if they want me, they've got me. So Daniel Radcliffe, Harry Potter, says he'd be willing to come and work in the MCU, as I mentioned, many actors are. This is a massive franchise, lots of opportunities, and a chance to really put your name on a character and have a legacy, if you're willing to put in the work for several years. Now, these last few who I'm going to mention haven't been tied to any rumors recently, but in the past have either tried out or expressed a direct interest with working in the MCU. Megan Fox, who has within the last year said she would love to have a role in the MCU, she would love to be part of the history that is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Simon Pegg, who actually tried out and almost got the role of Ant-Man over Paul Rudd, has expressed interest several separate times in being involved in the MCU as a major hero. Timothée Chalamet from Dune also tried out for the role of Spider-Man, as was one of the final runners, although it ultimately ended up going to Tom Holland. And this was a long time ago, so things change, but Matthew McConaughey actually tried out for Hulk, and although he didn't ultimately get the role, as we all know, he has expressed interest and open to opportunities to potentially play other characters within the MCU if it worked out. So schedule, money, lots of different details, and probably has to be a character that Matthew likes. But that's a long list of awesome actors who we're all very familiar with, and if you aren't, you will be one day, because they're in a ton of movies that would be and want to be involved in the MCU. Let me know which actor from this list, or from any list really, that you would like to see in the MCU and who you would have them play. I would really like to see Zac Efron off this list join the MCU at some point. I do think he would be an awesome Human Torch. However, I do think there are other roles out there that he could also play extremely well. But let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section down below. Show me your fan casting and your biggest, wildest celebrity dreams when it comes to joining the MCU. Thank you guys so much for watching to the very end of the video. If you found it helpful, useful, or interesting, consider subscribing and turning on that notification bell. And I'll be catching all of you guys in the next one right here on Cosmic Culture.